Good afternoon. It's my honor and privilege to welcome you to the BW Dialogue. Today, we have two guests who are authors, who are professionals and leaders in their domains, who've come together to write a book that in some way will become part of the shared history of India. And it's about a important force in India's politics, in India's growth as a country. So let me welcome Shri Bhupender Yadav ji, who is a Union Cabinet Minister for Environment. He's a senior political leader of the BJP, one of the people who in the last 7 years we've interfaced with. Welcome, Shri Bhupender Yadav ji. We also have Professor Ila Patnaik, who again has been an economist, who's worked in the socio-economic side, apart from her intellectual pursuits, and they've come together to create this Jugalbandi, to write this very enjoyable read, The Rise of the BJP, the Making of the World's Largest Political Party. So let me welcome Professor Ila Patnaik and Shri Bhupender Yadav ji. They both don't really need an introduction, so we really dive into the book. First of all, how did this collaboration come about? The idea of writing this together come about? How did you come together to write this book?
Actually, the idea of writing is India. So, idea of India is when two different perspective thought come together and giving their own perspective of a one subject. So that is the beauty of India. क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ पे कहा जाता है कि बहुत सारी नदियाँ एक ही समुद्र की ओर जाती है, डिफरेंट डायरेक्शन से. तो दैट इज ए इंडियन फिलॉसफी. तो हो सकता है मेरी और इलाजी की जब बातचीत हुई तो ये फिलॉसफी इवॉल्व हुई. इलाजी एक इकोनॉमी के पर्सपेक्टिव से पूरे लंबे समय से सरकार की समीक्षा कर रही हैं, सरकार की इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजर भी रही हैं. मैं पॉलिटिकल लिहाज से और पॉलिटिकल एक्टिविस्ट के नाते लिहाज से चीजों को देखता हूँ. हमारी चर्चा 2019 के चुनाव को लेकर के हुई और उनका कहना था क्यों ना 2019 पर एक आप बुक लाते हैं कि बीजेपी क्यों दोबारा जीती. जब वो प्राइमरी ड्राफ्ट मैंने तैयार किया तो इलाजी का कहना था कि ये केवल 2019 से विषय नहीं बनेगा, इसकी एक कंटिन्यूटी होनी चाहिए. तो कंटिन्यूटी फिर वो बीजेपी की जो हमारे प्रेडिसेसर है जनसंघ, उसकी यात्रा से शुरू हुई और फिर मिलकर जब हमने लिखा तो लगा कि पॉलिटिक्स के साथ साथ इकोनॉमी है, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली हम लोगों का वोट लेकर के पॉलिसी बनाने के लिए आते हैं. तो बीजेपी को अब तीसरी बार मौका मिला है, अटल जी के नेतृत्व में मौका मिला और अब 2 बार प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के नेतृत्व. तो इसकी इकोनॉमी समझना भी बहुत जरूरी है पॉलिसी के मामले में. तो मैंने इलाजी से रिक्वेस्ट करी कि पॉलिसी आपसे बेटर कौन बता सकता है, तो हम दोनों मिले. अब ज्यादा इलाजी ही बता सकते हैं.
Professor Patnaik, of course, Mr. Yadav has shared how did this idea come together to fruition. We'd love to know your perspective on how the initial idea was to write on the win of the 2019 Lok Sabha election, and then it became about the journey of BJP.
So we were trying to understand why the BJP won more seats than many people had expected. The world was trying to understand. And, I was also trying to write about it because I write a regular column. And so I was trying to, look into various aspects. And my sense was that this is political economy. This is the coming from an improvement in governance. And when I started talking to Bhupender ji about it, I think we completely agreed that politics and economics go together, that if you're reaching out to people, you're improving growth, you're doing redistribution, you're doing better governance. It all comes from what are the objectives of a political party and how it functions both as when it's in government and as a party and how it reaches out to people. So, you can't separate politics and economics. It is one, it is political economy. So, this journey was something that he had lived through this journey. And when I tried to look around, were there any books talking about this? Were there any books on the BJP by an insider? By somebody, of course, there are lots of books by very, very well-established journalists and authors who have studied the BJP and understood it. But here was somebody who was an insider and who had actually lived
lived the philosophy.
Lived the practices, lived in the organization. And so we thought that this was a journey that was worth telling, that other people will also want to know about it, want to know how the politics and economics played, how this party evolved, how it's come to be at the center stage of the party, and from this unique perspective of somebody who is inside the party, rather than as others have done who have been observers from the outside.
Yeah. Thank you for that insight. Now let me ask you, there are 12 chapters in the book, there is a preface, there is an epilogue, and then there are notes and index. Out of the 12 chapters, aapka, Bhupender Yadav ji, which is your most favorite chapter and why? Of course, I can, my most favorite chapter is the 5th chapter, which is when the BJP came first in power, because kind of it gives a perspective on, the political economic policies that some of them started then. दो प्रधानमंत्री हुए हैं, श्री अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी और श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी. So some of the seeds were sowed then. So that's my favorite chapter, the 5th chapter, BJP in government from 1996 to 2004. What is your favorite chapter, Bhupender Yadav ji?
अनुराग जी, परिवार में किसी से पूछो कि आपके 3 बच्चों में से कौन सा आपको सबसे ज्यादा प्यारा, तो जो ऑथर होता है उसके लिए हर चैप्टर महत्वपूर्ण होता है, क्योंकि पार्टी के फेस इस प्रकार का है. आपने देखा होगा कि जब दीनदयाल जी जनसंघ में आए और श्यामा प्रसाद मुखर्जी की सडनली डेथ हुई, पार्टी ने एक बहुत बड़ी पर्सनालिटी को खोया. और उस समय उस चैप्टर में हमने डिस्क्राइब करा कि ऐसा लगने लगा कि जनसंघ को कोई बड़ा लीडर चाहिए, क्योंकि सब यंग्स थे, यंगस्टर्स का ग्रुप था जिनका कोई बहुत आइडेंटिटी नहीं थी अपार्ट फ्रॉम श्यामा प्रसाद मुखर्जी. ऐसे में 15 साल तक पार्टी को बीज के रूप में बोने का काम दीनदयाल जी ने किया. और जब हमने एपिलॉग भी लिखा है तो हमने लिखा है कि पार्टी एक डेडिकेशन के साथ खड़ी हुई है. तो वो चैप्टर अपने आप में एक बड़ा और महत्वपूर्ण चैप्टर है. लेकिन उसके बाद
जनसंघ आफ्टर मुखर्जी,
जनसंघ आफ्टर मुखर्जी एंड द जनसंघ का बीज के रूप में जनसंघ को लगाना, उस समय जो उसको एक जो फंक्शनिंग दीनदयाल जी ने दी वो इम्पोर्टेंट है. दूसरा, अगर आप देखेंगे तो 84 में हमारी 2 सीटें आई और उसमें हमने लिखा है कि गांधीनगर में अधिवेशन हुआ और अटल जी ने कहा कि भाई हमारी 2 सीटें आई है, उसका ये कारण तो नहीं है कि लोग दीपक को चाहते थे, हम कमल लेकर के आ गए. अटल जी का उस समय कहना था. और दूसरा उन्हें कहना था क्या हमें वापस से इन रूट जाना चाहिए. तो पार्टी का एक वापस से रीडिजाइन का फेज था. तो आप देखेंगे कि 84 में जिनके 2 सांसद आए, वही पार्टी 91 में देश की रिकॉग्नाइज विपक्षी पार्टी बनी. और तो ये फेस एक पार्टी का महत्वपूर्ण फेस है. 14 से 19 इसलिए है कि जो हम 98 से और 2004 के बीच में जिन गलतियों के कारण दोबारा नहीं आए थे, 14 से 19 में सरकार और संगठन का समन्वय रहा और अमित शाह जी और नरेंद्र मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में संगठन और सरकार ने एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाई. मुझे लगता है ये फेसेस अगर निकल करके आएंगे तो बुक में ज्यादा महत्वपूर्ण आएंगे, जो पार्टी का डेडिकेशन, पार्टी का एक्सपेंशन और पार्टी की कंटिन्यूटी, 3 अलग अलग दौर है जिसमें पार्टी चली है.
Beautifully explained, Professor Ila Patnaik. What's your favorite chapter and why?
So as Bhupender ji said, we worked on every single sentence and every single word in the book. So it's very hard to say that I don't like some one chapter versus the other. But basically we tried to, the book is broadly in 2 parts, broadly. One, the part up till 2014, where we tell you how the party got here. The kind of majority that it got, the kind of popularity of Prime Minister Modi that came in the 1914 elections, and how, this was a very popular government, but how we got here. And that journey was very, very fascinating because, many of us who read daily newspapers and magazines are not familiar with this journey. And even those who have only seen parts of it. So I was very familiar with the economic policies of the NDA government because I was writing my columns then also, but I had not seen it all in a perspective. So that whole first part, rather than a chapter, for me, it was, truly fascinating because when we were doing the research, it was revealing new things to me. And it was an experience which was coming from, things that are in the archives, primary sources, books that are not, that are out of print, like Craig Baxter's book, which you can't find anywhere. So that was very, very fascinating for me, how we got here.
Absolutely. And also acts as a, people who are young idealists who join the party. It gives them a perspective of what the party has been built on, what was the thought process. And now let me get to some of the chapters in the book and some of the content in the book. Now, the Jansangh after Mukherjee, and Yadav Sahab has already talked about why that chapter is important, because the party was, so to say, born there. It was born in October 1951. And again, the 1984 elections were possibly not the best time for entry because of the assassination of the Prime Minister. And really, that made the election one-sided. It was not possibly, a perfect time to enter. But in retrospective, everything works out. But let's now focus on how the Jansangh was born, how the Jansangh grew after Shyama Prasad Mukherjee ji, and how did the party really, in some way, built its base and became a nationwide socio-political community, if I may use that word, and not just a party. From the community, the party. And even when it merged with the Janata Party in the late 70s, it became a bigger political force and retained its ideals and grew from there. So let's focus a bit on the history. भूपेंद्र यादव जी, मैं पूछना चाहूंगा कि आप दर्शकों को ऐसे कौन से माइलस्टोन्स हैं जो बुक में, जो आप समझते हैं कि दर्शकों को एक बीजेपी की फिलॉसफी, हिस्ट्री, और इफ आई मे यूज द वर्ड स्ट्रगल, बिकॉज इनिशियल इज मेड टू हैव एन पॉलिटिकल इम्पैक्ट, एंड जैसा आपने किताब में बताया और जैसा हम सबको पता है कि द आइडिया वाज नॉट टू बी अ पॉलिटिकल पार्टी, द आइडिया वाज टू बी अ सोशियो पॉलिटिकल फोर्स, टू बी अ फोर्स फॉर गुड. तो थोड़ा सा उसका give us a perspective on on the past and how the party was born, and the first three chapters, the Jansangh after Mukherjee, and how the party was born. थोड़ा हमारे दर्शकों को इसके बारे में बताइए.
एक्चुअल में ब्रिटिशर्स के आने के साथ साथ हिंदुस्तान में एक प्रक्रिया और चल रही थी कि उस समय मिडिल एज में जो हमारे एक भक्ति परंपरा देश में शुरू हुई, मीरा, रैदास, कबीर, नानक, ये जो शुरू हुए, तो इसमें 3-4 चीजें बहुत शुरू हुई. पहला, कास्ट रेडिकलिज्म के खिलाफ अटैक हुआ, पाखंड के खिलाफ अटैक हुआ, वुमेन डिग्निटी को लेकर के बातें हुई, महिला सम्मान को लेकर के बात हुई. एक अलग परंपरा से भारत में एक सुधारवादी आंदोलन चला, और गांधी जी ने आने के बाद उस सुधारवादी आंदोलन के जो मूल्य थे उनको राजनीति में भी स्थापित किया. तो आजादी के बाद जब ये देश हमारा एक नया देश के रूप में हम बने, तब ये लगा कि हिंदुस्तान के जो मूल सुधारवादी आंदोलन आए थे, कुछ लोग मानते थे सुधार केवल ब्रिटिशर्स के कारण आए थे, कुछ लोग मानते थे कि हमारे समय में कुछ ऐसी टाइम के साथ कमियां आई कि सुधारवाद हमारे अंदर से भी आया. तो केवल गवर्नेंस में सुधार नहीं होना चाहिए, अपने आइडियोलॉजिकल स्तर पे भी सुधार होना चाहिए, और हमको ये लगना चाहिए कि हम एक कल्चरल हेरिटेज के साथ जुड़े हुए हैं. इस नेशनलिस्टिक पर्सपेक्टिव को लेकर के उस समय में जो नेहरू जी का लियाकत पैक्ट था, उसको लेकर श्यामा प्रसाद मुखर्जी ने रिजाइन किया था.
एब्सोल्युटली.
श्यामा प्रसाद मुखर्जी का रिजाइन और ये नेशनलिस्टिक आइडिया, ये जो दोनों जो चीजें जब साथ,
आई डोंट वांट टू स्टॉप यू, बट आई जस्ट वांट टू गिव द रीडर्स पर्सपेक्टिव दैट Shyama Prasad Mukherjee said, while the issue of Kashmir is very complex, as you say in the book, but taking it to the United Nations is a blunder that we will all, pay for throughout the years, and that has come true. If you look at the history, that has come true, and really, the only good thing was at that time the politics was not partisan. As you know, the government was a wider government. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee was a minister in the government.
Baba Sahib Ambedkar was the part of government.
So really,
in interim government.
In the interim government.
In the interim government.
Yeah. So fact is that what Shyama Prasad Mukherjee said that time actually came true. He moved out of the government on ideological differences. So go on. I just wanted to give that perspective.
और उस पर्सपेक्टिव में अगर देखेंगे तो जो फर्स्ट जनसंघ का अधिवेशन हुआ कानपुर में, आज जिस हम एफडीआई की बात करते हैं, आज जिस हम डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन की बात करते हैं, आज जिस हम मिनिमम गवर्नेंस मैक्सिमम गवर्नेंस मिनिमम गवर्नमेंट की बात आज जो हम करते हैं, ये सारे 21 रेजोल्यूशन पास हुए थे, ये 51 में सबसे पहले पास हुए थे। तो हमारी पार्टी ने जो 51 में कहा, जिस विषय को लेकर के चले उसी को हम कंटिन्यू चल रहे हैं। हम कभी ऐसा नहीं हुआ कि हम कभी अपने आइडियोलॉजिकल इकोनॉमिकल विषयों से कहीं डाइल्यूट हुए। दूसरा एक विषय आया कि 50 में पहली बार एक कोलेशन श्यामा प्रसाद जी ने अपोजिशन का बनाया, लेकिन उनके जाने के बाद पार्टी में धीरे धीरे अटल जी नए नेता के रूप में मर्ज हुए। तो एक ऐसा दौर आया कि जब कांग्रेस के खिलाफ सारे विपक्षी दल इकट्ठे हुए और 67 में मध्य प्रदेश में, उत्तर प्रदेश में सम्मिश्र सरकारें बनी। तो बीजेपी के अंदर एक वैचारिक आंदोलन चला कि सम्मिश्र सरकारों में हमें कम्युनिस्टों के साथ भी जाना चाहिए या नहीं जाना चाहिए। कुछ जगह ऐसे थे, पार्टी के अंदर भी दो तरह के विचार चले। दूसरा, में सम्मिश्र सरकार में जाना भी चाहिए या नहीं जाना चाहिए। हम तो आइडियोलॉजी को लेकर के चले तो केवल आइडियोलॉजी पे रहेंगे, लेकिन हमें गवर्नेंस का पार्ट बन, ये एक ऐसा वैचारिक द्वंद्व था जो पार्टी के अंदर आया था। लेकिन पार्टी ने अल्टीमेटली कहा कि अगर आप पॉलिटिक्स में हैं तो आपको गवर्नेंस का पार्ट बनना चाहिए और गवर्नेंस में डिलीवरी देना चाहिए। तो मुझे लगता है ये एक दूसरा विषय था। तीसरा विषय था कि जब आप नेशनलिस्टिक आइडियोलॉजी को लेकर के चल रहे हैं और आपको लग रहा है कि देश की डेमोक्रेसी ही खत्म हो गई, डेमोक्रेसी ही कोलैप्स हो गई, तो हमारी जो नेशन फर्स्ट की थ्योरी है कि पार्टी से पहले देश जरूरी है, तो बीजेपी ने अपने आप को जनता पार्टी में मर्ज कर दिया। तो हमने अपनी आइडियोलॉजी, अपने सारे विषयों को रखते हुए अपने बाकी लोगों के साथ मर्ज किया। ये एक तीसरा विषय। चौथा, अगर आप देखेंगे, जनता पार्टी बनने के बाद भी हमारा पूरा पॉलिटिकल लाइफ में एक बात रही जो दीनदयाल जी ने भी कहा था कि हिंदुस्तान से सोशल अनटचेबिलिटी एक स्टिग्मा हो गई है, लेकिन पॉलिटिकल अनटचेबिलिटी बरकरार है। हम सम्मिश्र सरकार में भी गए, हम बाकी जगह भी गए, लेकिन जब जिसको जरूरत होती है हमें कम्युनल कह के एक तरफ कर दिया जाता था। 74 में जनता पार्टी बनने के बाद भी सेम चीज हुई। जब हमारे पे एक आरोप लगा कि नहीं हम कम्युनल है, हम जनता पार्टी में सबसे बड़ा धड़ा जनसंघ का जीत के आया, तो हमने हमारे उस समय अटल जी को ये लगा और बड़े नेताओं को, अडवाणी जी को लगा कि नहीं, हमारे लिए आइडियोलॉजी है। हमने मर्ज करी थी पार्टी देश को लोकतंत्र से बचाने के लिए, लेकिन अगर हमारी बेसिक आइडियोलॉजी पे क्वेश्चन है तो हम अलग होना स्वीकार करेंगे, उसमें कोई कॉम्प्रोमाइज नहीं होगा। तो कंसिस्टेंसी भी रखी, लेकिन अपने आप को मर्ज करके फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी भी रखी। पार्टी के अंदर भी विमर्श हुआ। और सबसे बड़ी बात है कि जब आप 50 में आए थे तो आपके 2-3 सांसद जीतते थे, तो लगता नहीं था कि कभी सरकार आएगी भी नहीं आएगी। तो हमारे यहाँ मजाक करते थे, पुराने नेता मुझे बताते थे कि जनसंघ के दिनों में हम जब चुनाव लड़ा करते तो मजाक किया करते थे कि चुनाव तक हम जीतेंगे, रिजल्ट में हम हार जाएंगे, लेकिन अगले चुनाव के लिए फिर लग जाएंगे। ये जनरेशन जो 20-30 साल तक लगी रही इस उत्साह के साथ, हार जाएंगे लेकिन आगे फिर लड़ेंगे, मुझे लगता है ये बीजेपी के फाउंडेशन का एक बहुत बड़ा कारण बना है। और आइडियोलॉजिकली प्योरिटी, कमिटमेंट, नेशनलिस्टिक व्यू, ये भी इन 3 समय में बीजेपी का एक बहुत मेजर फाउंडेशन स्टोन बना है, जो मुझे इन तीन कालखंड की उपलब्धि लगती है।
I would say when I was reading the book, the fact that even when Annadurai ji was there and DMK could come to power, I'm sure it would have given the founders of the Jansangh and the BJP some hope that there can be hope outside the Congress, that parties though it was a regional party in the south, but it would have given that hope and the possibility that there is hope outside the Congress and outside the prevailing coalition of that time. Professor Patnaik, now let me come to you. We are doing this conversation in 2022, and we've had 8 years. We've had 8 years of the BJP government, and we've had the expansion of the party where it has become the biggest party. Now, as you said right up front, there cannot be any separation while there's separation between the government and the party, but in terms of the philosophy, in terms of the social agenda, in terms of the coming together of the policies in sync with the ideology of the party for the benefit of the citizens. Give us a sense of what do you think have been the highlights of this jugalbandi, of this unison, of this coming together of a political philosophy and a governance philosophy, and leading to, good things for the party and the government.
So when you look at what the party's objectives were right from the beginning, including the works of Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay, where he talked about Antodaya, integral humanism. Now, you find that fundamentally there is an objective of wanting to raise the standard of living of the people, wanting to make sure that the poorest are uplifted. So the last man in the mile, the last man in the queue, his standard of living is uplifted. That is the fundamental thread that runs through whether the NDA-1 government, and I'll come to how, these last 8 years. So how is it attempted? It is done through trying to get the right balance between growth and redistribution and welfare programs through better governance. So while on the one hand, you will see an emphasis on, things like telecom reforms in the NDA-1 government, telecom reforms, privatization, they were all an attempt to get growth up. You need to get growth up. You can't redistribute poverty because, India was a poor country. And so you had to get growth up. And that push really laid the foundations both for higher growth and for the kind of institutional infrastructure. Without telecom reforms, we couldn't have been doing what we're doing now and a lot more. Okay? So that laid the foundations for growth. And it was then later carried through in the last 8 years as well, both by the government and the party, where a large number of schemes came in, which were compared to any other previous government, which were very, very well governed. So you got rid of the leakages, you did them very efficiently. So that way, what happens is that if out of every 100 rupees, 85 rupees is going to disappear, in contrast to the entire 100 going in a targeted way to the people to whom it is, for whom it is meant, you actually get 6 times the impact from the same 100 rupees. Okay? And then the party also takes up these programs, and we've described that in the book, that how the party also took up this initiatives, which the government was taking initiatives on the welfare programs, and got, reached out to people, made sure that the programs were well implemented, as well as reached out to people that this is what the party's objectives are also. So that combination of party and government coming together on common themes and communicating to people and reaching out to them, as well as the balance between growth and redistribution. That is what defines the various governments.
Absolutely. And Professor Patnaik, I must tell you, and Bhupender ji, 2019 के चुनाव से पहले मैं आपके एक यूपी के एक एमएलए हैं, वो मेरे अच्छे मित्र हैं, उनसे बात कर रहा था, और मैंने उनसे पूछा कि कितनी सीट आएंगी, तो उन्होंने बोला कि 300 सीट आएंगी। तो मैंने उनसे पूछा क्यों? बोले अनुराग, तुम रहते हो दिल्ली में और वो यूपी के एक जिले में है। तो उन्होंने बोला कि आप ये अंदाजा नहीं लगा सकते कि जो लास्ट माइल डिलीवरी है उससे लोग कितना खुश हैं मोदी जी से। और ये उनकी 6 या 8 महीने पहले उन्होंने वो एक मुझे स्टेटिस्टिक्स भेजी, और जिस दिन इलेक्शन के रिजल्ट्स आए तो मैंने उनको फोन करके बोला कि आप बिल्कुल ठीक थे, बिकॉज वो ग्राउंड पे हैं, उनको पता है कि लोग क्या बोल रहे हैं, क्या कह रहे हैं। एंड क्योंकि वो मेरे दोस्त बहुत साल से हैं, मुझे पता है कि he has tremendous credibility with me for me to believe what he was saying, right? Because I know the kind of person he is, so I totally buy that the fact that the bottom of the pyramid has been the focus, and in some way that has also resulted in the growth of the party, right? It has, as my father would tell me, that the Jan Sangh and the Bharatiya Janata Party was a party of traders. It was a party of the middle class, which were traders. Yes. And today it is a party which has expanded its base. It has become a party for a much larger base, which also includes the lower sections of the society. So I would say, rather than losing a lot of people. It has added people, and that has been the predominant reason for the growth. Bhupender Yadav ji, आपसे इस बारे में एक टिप्पणी चाहूंगा मैं, और and then I'll move on to another chapter.
एक्चुअल में लास्ट माइल डिलीवरी से ज्यादा जो और बड़ा काम हुआ है वो है टारगेटेड डिलीवरी, कि लास्ट माइल डिलीवरी भी विद इन टाइम हो। और उसको आप ऐसा देखिए कि सरकार ने ये कहा कि हम उज्ज्वला पहुंचाएंगे 5 करोड़ को, पहुंचाई 10 करोड़ को। सरकार ने कहा हम जनधन खाते खोलेंगे, जनधन खाते खुले 30 करोड़ से ज्यादा लोगों के। सरकार ने कहा हम वैक्सीन लगाएंगे, तो 100 करोड़ को वैक्सीन लगी, केवल प्रोड्यूस ही नहीं हुई, ये 5 साल में लगी। हमने कहा हम 38 करोड़ का ई श्रम डाटा बनाएंगे, आज हम 25 करोड़ पे पहुंचने जा रहे हैं। तो लास्ट माइल डिलीवरी से जो ज्यादा बड़ा आयुष तो किसान सम्मान निधि 10 करोड़ किसानों को एक साथ जा रही है। तो लास्ट माइल डिलीवरी से ज्यादा, और फिर उससे ऐसा नहीं है केवल डिलीवरी जा रही है। आप देखिए जो 99 प्रोजेक्ट्स जो थे सरकार के एक लंबे समय से इंटर स्टेट इरिगेशन प्रोजेक्ट्स जो लटके हुए थे, आज लगभग 80% पूरे होने पे आ गए,
क्योंकि प्रधानमंत्री ने स्टेट के सेक्रेटरीज के साथ
एक प्रगति का पोर्टल किया।
बिल्कुल।
और प्रगति ने मतलब बहुत लंबे समय से जो हमारे प्रोजेक्ट केवल 100 मीटर 500 मीटर पे थे उनको पूरा करने का काम किया। तो ये डिलीवरी केवल इंडिविजुअल नहीं है, ये डिलीवरी इन टर्म्स ऑफ पॉलिसी है, डिलीवरी इन टर्म्स ऑफ इम्प्लीमेंटेशन है, बेसिकली इफेक्टिव एग्जीक्यूशन है। गवर्नेंस का अर्थ ही ये है कि लोगों का पैसा इफेक्टिव तरीके से एग्जीक्यूट हो, और इसका इम्पैक्ट पड़ा है, मैं भी इस बात को स्वीकार करता हूँ।
और दूसरा मैं कहना चाहूंगा, मैंने एक लेख लिखा जिस दिन हमारे वैक्सीनेशन एक रिकॉर्ड नंबर पर पहुंची, तो उस दिन मैंने CNN में एक लेख पढ़ा। उस लेख का हेडलाइन था 1 billion vaccinated but millions go without first dose. So it got my goat, and I've always believed that the foreign media is very unfair to India. And while we have lots of things to improve, I will not say that there are none and we are perfect, but I think a lot of times they focus on the negatives of India for reasons best known to them. We can extrapolate that because they work on their agendas. And I wrote a piece that has to be a template for not giving a compliment, and this is the West preaching to us when they haven't been able to do more than 36% vaccination, right? Yes. And you can look at the deaths there now. I mean, look at in the third wave, how the only, my 83-year-old dad, who unwittingly just came into the conversation to pick up his newspapers from my room, tells me that the only reason we've done well is because we vaccinated. I mean, that's one of the things. So I believe that this book also serves, it takes the story of India and BJP to the world, because they don't have enough material on the party, and sometimes, unfortunately, they rely on sources that are biased. Let me say that. So this book is of course it is about BJP, but the fact is BJP is the dominant force in Indian politics right now, and is likely to be the dominant force for a while. So when you write the book, you also do a service to the country by taking the right narrative outside the country, because with Professor Ila Patnaik there and our credential with that. Now let me come to another aspect, which is the expansion and outreach, which is the 10th chapter. And you talk about how you expanded the base, how the campaigns were taken, and how the acceptability of BJP in states, and your ambition again. जैसे आपने केरला में एक ambition रखा और उससे कुछ इजाफा हुआ, there was some addition. In Bengal, you did very well. Of course, you aimed for the skies and you got somewhere. 80 plus seats is not a joke in a state where you had single digit seats. So let's focus on the expansion and outreach. And my question to both Professor Patnaik, as a commentator, as somebody who's seen the government and the party, who's written the book, and you as somebody who's very integral part of the party, and possibly among the tallest leader right now, and leaders who have even more future, the best is yet to come. And the fact that you were brought in from your important party positions into the government, what do you think is the future for the party? अगले 3 साल, of course 2024 में इलेक्शन है, बट अगले जो पार्टी है, ऐसा लगता है किताब पढ़ने के बाद कि पार्टी थोड़ा लॉन्ग टर्म सोचती है, 10 साल 20 साल 25 साल बहुत आगे सोचती है पार्टी, ऐसा. And it is not focused on short-term results. While elections are about short-term results, party building and building the base is a more long term. So, आगे what should we expect from the BJP?
आपने सही कहा अनुराग जी, 14 से 19 का एक एक्सपेंशन का टाइम था, लेकिन मैं थोड़ा सा आपको कहना चाहूंगा 14 में एक बड़ा डिसीजन अमित शाह जी के नेतृत्व में पार्टी ने किया और प्रधानमंत्री जी ने उसका शुभारंभ किया। क्या है, हमारा मिडिल क्लास और नॉर्मल मिडिल क्लास भी दे वांट टू बी बिकम ए पार्ट ऑफ ए पॉलिटिकल जर्नी, लेकिन किसको मिले, मोहल्ले में किसको जाके मिले, किससे बात करे, कौन मिलेगा, कैसे मिलेगा। तो पार्टी ने एक नया प्रोग्राम चलाया। उन्होंने कहा हम अपनी मेंबरशिप ही डिजिटल करेंगे। सो दोज हु वांट्स टू बिकम ए मेंबर ओनली अपना एक मिस्ड कॉल दो, नाउ यू बिकम ए मेंबर। सो पार्टी ने लगभग 12 करोड़ लोगों को मेंबर बनाया। इट्स ए बिगेस्ट एक्सपेंशन। लेकिन मेंबर बनाने के बाद पार्टी यहाँ पे रुकी नहीं। आपने बुक में भी देखा होगा, इमीडिएटली मेंबरशिप ड्राइव को समाप्त करके पार्टी ने एक संपर्क अभियान चलाया। तो उन्होंने वो नंबर्स जो आए थे उनको सेग्रीगेट किया और बीजेपी का एक कार्यकर्ता होगा तो वो उन लोगों को जाकर के मिला कि आप मेंबर बने हो, आपका स्वागत है। तो पीपल फील जो नेशनली कनेक्ट हुए थे वो लोकली इंटैक्ट हो गए। मतलब मैंने नंबर तो नेशनली किया लेकिन लोकल कैसे इंटैक्ट हो, तो वो गैप को भरा। तीसरा, उसके तुरंत बाद पार्टी ने एक प्रशिक्षण अभियान चलाया पार्टी की 6 आइडियोलॉजी के विषय लेकर के और कहा कि आप मेंबर बने हो, आइए हमारी इन बातों को सुनिए। तो फिर वो प्रोग्राम का हिस्सा बन गए। 2014 से 19 का जो सबसे बड़ा कारण रहा कि सरकार के काम और पार्टी के प्रोग्राम ये एक साथ चले। और चुनाव से पहले भी आपने देखा होगा पार्टी ने जैसे एक अभियान चलाया, विशेष संपर्क अभियान। आर्टिस्ट है, प्लेयर है, एकेडमिक है, साइंटिस्ट है, रिटायर्ड ब्यूरोक्रेट्स है, पंचायत प्रतिनिधि है, महिला है, पद्मश्री इनके लिए विशेष संपर्क चलाया। क्योंकि अभी क्या होता है कि पॉलिटिक्स में ये लोग दूर रहते हैं, तो वॉइस आपको वो सुनाई देती है जो एक्चुअल में अपना ज्यादा शोर मचाते हैं, लेकिन जो इंटेलेक्चुअल नरेटिव वॉइस है उससे जाकर के मिलना। तो मुझे लगता है विशेष संपर्क अभियान से एक बड़ा आउटरीच प्रोग्राम किया। पार्टी ने अपने आप को डिपार्टमेंट में बांटा और डिपार्टमेंट में बांट के एक सिस्टमेटिक काम किया। ये एक एक्सपेंशन पीरियड के कुछ विषय में बता रहा हूं जो बड़ा साइंटिफिकली अमित शाह जी के नेतृत्व में, प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के दिशा निर्देशन में, क्योंकि प्रधानमंत्री जी इस बार एक ऐसा नेतृत्व पार्टी के पास है जो लंबे समय तक संगठन मंत्री भी रहे, प्योर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का काम किया, फिर स्टेट के सीएम रहे और अब पीएम है। तो उनका वो अनुभव और दिशा भी काम आया। लेकिन अब आपने कहा फ्यूचर क्या है, आप हमारे एपिलॉग का अगर लास्ट पैराग्राफ अगर आप पढ़ेंगे, जो एपिलॉग का लास्ट पैराग्राफ है उसमें हमने स्पष्ट रूप से लिखा है फ्यूचर है नॉन डायनेस्टिक पॉलिटिक्स, एक्सपेंशन, विकास, गवर्नेंस और अपने आप को नॉन डायनेस्टिक रखते हुए डेमोक्रेटिक वैल्यूज के साथ आगे बढ़ना और सभी वर्गों के एस्पिरेशन को साथ में जोड़ना। इस फ्यूचर प्लान के लिए जो साइंटिफिक अभी डिपार्टमेंट बने हैं, सदस्यता बना, और सबसे बड़ी बात है हम कभी भी टेक्नोलॉजी का उपयोग करने में शर्माए नहीं है। हमारा मानना है टेक्नोलॉजी एक्सपेंशन भी देती है, एक्सप्रेशन भी देती है। क्योंकि आज आप सोशल मीडिया में केवल आपका एक्सपेंशन नहीं, यू योरसेल्फ एक्सप्रेस योरसेल्फ। तो आज प्लेटफॉर्म में आप खुद एक्सप्रेस अपने आप को कर सकते हो। पार्टी इस ताकत को पहचानती है और हमारा मानना है ये कम्युनिकेशन लगातार चलना चाहिए, लेकिन नॉन डायनेस्टिक पॉलिटिक्स की ओर चलना चाहिए, तभी हम डेमोक्रेसी को बचा पाएंगे। ये हमारी पार्टी की पूरा एक्सपेंशन का प्लान है।
थैंक यू श्री यादव। प्रोफेसर पटनायक, now as Mr. Yadav said right at the upfront that your initial idea of the book was to look at the success of the party in coming back to power in 2019 and what worked for the government of the day to be able to be re-elected, what worked for the campaign of 2019 to be re-elected, and that's the chapter 12, that's the last chapter. I would want you to focus a bit of that and give our readers and viewers a sense of what's in that chapter.
So fundamentally, when you come to that chapter, by then you have understood that this was a party that was expanding in many dimensions. Now, whether those dimensions were regional, whether those dimensions were communities, various communities, castes, along which India has so far been divided, or whether it was whose aspirations it was fighting for and trying to achieve. And I think by then you get a sense, I hope by then the reader gets a sense that, from a party which used to be called a Baniya Hindi Belt party, also perhaps the impression that the media gives is that it only will talk to certain parties or will collude with them. From there, it has become far more open. It has become mass cadre based. It has come to a point where different communities feel that this party represents their interests, and they are all able to come together. Now, I think in addition to all of that, one of the very important aspects of this party has been the ideological, the support, as well as in terms of the people that they get that come from the RSS. And that has been a core strength of the party, even in elections. And when it comes to people who are, reaching out, so when we describe things like the Panna Pramukhs, who are the people who have are going that on election day to reach out to people, or even prior to that, to reach out to the people on that page of the voters list. There is one person who will reach out from the party. There is an attempt to reach out to everybody. And the way it is organized and the way the party is able to, this is huge, this is countrywide. And the way the party is able to do that and reach out to everybody and encourage people to come out to vote on that day. I think that is something that we've tried to convey and we want people to understand.
At that point, I will bring Mr. Yadav in, but Professor Patnaik, because you're a little outside the party, so let me ask you this question first. See, I'm a Hindu, so I believe in the Hindu philosophy and I'm a practicing Hindu. So I believe in the trinity of gods, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. So there's a concept of creative destruction, which means to be able to create something, you have to destroy something. Shivji ne destruction kiya. I would call it creative destruction, right? Now, of course, ideology is very long-term, it's very solid, it's the base, it's the pillar, it's the roots, right? So it cannot change now and then. But if I had to say, if there was a refreshment of the ideology, what do you think when we are in 2022 and as the BJP marches on, looks towards the 2024 election, looks towards retaining some of the states it has, the big states, and more importantly, staying relevant and kind of broad-basing its base that it has continued to do in the last 8 years. What do you think is the refreshment required? And the party has been very pragmatic. So it has not given up its core ideology. It has stayed true to that. But it has been very pragmatic. So in that context, I'm asking you.
I'm not sure that I would call it a refreshment. But I think that it's already on a path where it is reaching out to many more than one might have previously thought. I'm not sure that what one previously thought was also correct, you see, because as you said, most of us just read what the media is trying to tell us.
Also my parents, when I have had interest in politics since the age of 8, and I come from Haryana. I was born in Rohtak and I grew up in Old Gurgaon. So my father would read newspapers in the morning. So I would read newspapers and my father would tell me things. And, so the impressions are formed from what your parents told you and what you read in the media, right? And at least the impressions formed when you're younger kind of tend to stay with you for a long time while you kind of update them. So you're right. The narratives are formed by the media. There's no question about that.
Yeah. And in that narrative has been a narrative that this party doesn't talk to everybody, that it doesn't, talk across the aisles, or that is the narrative. Whereas I think what we show pretty again and again and again in almost every chapter is that various coalitions were formed, how the party reached out. And in fact, the party could not have expanded had it not talked to anybody. Had it been a small cadre-based party, it would have been impossible for the party to expand, because then they would only have been talking to each other. I mean, you look at the communists, for example. I think it's true for them because they have collapsed because they did not reach out, did not talk to others. So they were inward looking and kept talking to, their own community, and the converted talked to the converted.
Neither did they keep pace with what's happening in the world or the country, nor did they grow a second generation. Today, when you look at the BJP, there is leadership being groomed at every level, at every state, in every nook and corner of the country, and where, for example, in the South, BJP is not that strong, relatively, Bhupender Yadav ji, वहाँ पे कोशिश हो रही है नए नेता लाए जाए. So I'm absolutely with you. We are almost 9 days away from the budget. So while ये चर्चा आपकी किताब के ऊपर है and BJP's journey, and the budget is also a political message. It's always, especially ये जो बजट है ये 2 साल के कोविड के बाद और प्रमुख प्रदेशों में इलेक्शन से पहले है, तो एंड पिछले बजट भी एक सोशल स्टेटमेंट रहे हैं, इंक्लूसिव बजट एंड ऑलवेज अ बजट फॉर द बॉटम ऑफ द पिरामिड. Of course, last year the focus was on agriculture, on rural issues. तो इस साल हम बजट में क्या एक्सपेक्ट कर सकते हैं? मुझे पता है आप एनवायरमेंट मिनिस्टर हैं, बट आप पार्टी में एक बहुत प्रमुख नेता हैं और you are the, so what should we expect in the budget directionally?
बजट एक पॉलिसी स्टेटमेंट सरकार का रहता है. अभी एक बार आएगा उसके बाद ही हम कह सकते हैं, क्योंकि मैं कैबिनेट का पार्ट भी हूँ. लेकिन जहां तक पार्टी की बात है और पार्टी की पॉलिसीज की बात है, पार्टी की पॉलिसी सबका साथ सबका विकास में पूरी तरह यकीन रखती है. गवर्नेंस के मॉडल में मैक्सिमम गवर्नेंस मिनिमम गवर्नमेंट के मॉडल में विश्वास करती है. और प्रधानमंत्री जी ने जो कहा है कि जो 2014 से 2019 का हमारा समय वो गरीब कल्याण के लिए है, लेकिन गरीब कल्याण की जो योजनाएं हैं जैसे शिक्षा, स्वास्थ्य आयुष्मान योजना, सड़क प्रधानमंत्री सड़क योजना, आवास प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना, इन बेसिक बुनियादी बातों के बाद मुझे लगता है कि अब आत्मनिर्भर भारत जो है प्रधानमंत्री जी का सपना है, उसको पूरा करने के लिए जो सरकार काम कर रही है, सरकार उसको पूरा करेगी.
थैंक यू सो मच. और मैं एक और टिप्पणी चाहूंगा कि प्रदेश के इलेक्शन है और उत्तर प्रदेश भारत का सबसे बड़ा प्रदेश है. हर तरीके से the number of people, 20% of India's population resides there. The contribution to the Lok Sabha is the largest from there, and it is really an important or the most important state. And February में वहाँ इलेक्शन है, मार्च में नई सरकार बनेगी वहाँ, ऐसे ना a fresh government. So I would like from you to know, and आप अभी प्रधानमंत्री एक नॉर्थ ईस्ट स्टेट गए थे, आप उसके प्रभारी भी हैं इलेक्शंस के, और you went in advance and you're very busy with the elections there and apart from your responsibilities in the cabinet and the party. तो मैं एक टिप्पणी चाहूंगा कि ये जो इलेक्शन हो रहे हैं, how do you see these elections? Because बहुत ध्रुवीकरण हो रहा है, और आपने अपनी किताब में शुरू में लिखा कि लकीली 1950 में divergent views, non-partisan views were very dominant, right? At least at the start. तो क्या, और समटाइम्स एक कहा जाता है कि जो इलेक्शंस होते हैं the pitch becomes very shrill, और ध्रुवीकरण होता है और सब करते हैं. तो मैं आपकी एक टिप्पणी चाहूंगा, क्योंकि आपकी किताब पढ़ने के बाद बीजेपी की जो छवि है, क्योंकि छवि बनती है लैक ऑफ नॉलेज से या लैक ऑफ ओनली पार्शियल इंफॉर्मेशन, वो चेंज होगी. एक तो मैं चाहूंगा कि ये किताब हिंदी में आए,
आ रही है, और आएगी, अनुवाद चल रहा है, 3 महीने में आ जाएगी, विश्वास करें.
जैसे हमारी एक वेबसाइट है अंग्रेजी में जो 21 साल से मीडिया पे, but 14 years back I started a website in Hindi on the business of media, because the maximum number of journalists, if you have to improve the cause of journalism, it has to be from the Hindi journalists. तो मैं चाहूंगा कि किताब पढ़ने के बाद the party comes across as a very pragmatic, I had written down 3 words, pragmatic, progressive and public facing. I wrote these 3 words. And of course, the party but the fact, if I focus on communication, I think in the last 8 years, the quality of communication and the level of engagement at every level has also benefited the party in doing well. तो मैं आपसे एक टिप्पणी चाहूंगा कि ये जो इलेक्शंस आ रहे हैं, इसमें of course, the importance of UP is such that of course, Nadda Sahab is there, but Dharmendra Pradhan ji has been entrusted with, Anurag ji has been entrusted with the part. It is such an important election. So what is your comment on the elections in UP, in Punjab, in Manipur and in Goa?
पार्टी निश्चित रूप से सभी राज्यों में अच्छा परफॉर्म करेगी. इस समय 4 राज्यों में हमारी सरकार भी है और उत्तर प्रदेश में विशेष रूप से योगी आदित्यनाथ जी के नेतृत्व में जो पिछले कोरोना के समय में काम हुआ है, हमें पूरा विश्वास है कि जनता पूरी तरीके से हमारे को वोट देगी. और ऐसा कभी होता नहीं है. देखिए, समाजवादियों ने पहले जब पिछली बार विधानसभा का चुनाव हुआ तो कांग्रेस के साथ इक्वेशन किया और लोकसभा का हुआ तो बीएसपी के साथ किया और आज वो नया इक्वेशन कर रहे हैं. तो जो हर 6 महीने में अपने साथियों को बदल रहे हैं वो यूपी को एक रख पाएंगे, सबसे बड़ा क्वेश्चन है. और उत्तराखंड में भी पार्टी की सरकार बहुत अच्छी है, हमारे ऊर्जावान मुख्यमंत्री हैं. गोवा में प्रमोद सावंत ने बहुत अच्छा काम किया है, देवेंद्र फडणवीस जी प्रभारी के नाते देख रहे हैं. मैं खुद मणिपुर से कल लौटा हूं और मणिपुर में तो एक बड़ा उत्साह है. मणिपुर में मैंने इतना बड़ा उत्साह पार्टी के लिए नहीं देखा. हम बहुत बड़ी मेजोरिटी के साथ आएंगे. पंजाब में जरूर अभी हमारा एक पार्टी के नाते अपने आप को एक्सपेंशन करने का समय है. पंजाब में मैं ये नहीं कह रहा हूं, हमारा एक्सपेंशन करने का समय पंजाब में है, लेकिन हमारी निश्चित रूप से एक अच्छी स्थिति पंजाब में भी पार्टी एक बहुत अच्छी स्थिति में उभर के आएगी. मैं इन सारे 5 राज्यों के चुनाव के लिए बहुत आशावान हूं.
Okay, Professor Patnaik, now you've been a social economic commentator, you've been an economic advisor, you've written this book, you have a long-standing career in observing what happens in politics, what happens in economics. And I was reading the column of Fareed Zakaria last week, and he said that the problem is that a lot of governments are doing so well politically that they're neglecting the economists. Earlier, economy would be a way to win politically. However, because they're doing so well politically, somewhere economy has taken a back seat. And एक perception भी है इस सरकार का, यादव जी, perception में, I'm not sure it's the reality, कि this government is weak on the economy. So, Professor Patnaik, given that we're doing this conversation 9 days ahead of the union budget, and it's an important budget. Every budget is an important budget, but as I said, it's the backdrop of 2 years of Corona. It is just before the elections of UP, Goa, Punjab, and Manipur. Also, in my understanding of the party, neither my party mein hu, na politics mein hu, is that jo ye budget hoga, it will be a base of launching programs and schemes that benefit bottom the pyramid, जिसके अगर 2024 में दिखेंगे या अगले 1-1.5 साल में दिखेंगे. So it's a very important budget. What are your expectations from the budget?
See, there is very limited fiscal space in the budget.
Okay.
Is given the economy, given tax.
Professor Patnaik, we are having an issue.
One where one could do a lot of big programs or any new program. I think we should. Sorry.
Okay, you are saying that we understand, but let me also paraphrase it by saying that government and government spending on infrastructure really creates jobs. I'm making it very simple, and jobs in GDP. And Pradhan Mantri ji has always said that we want to create $1 trillion economy. We need to have higher ambitions. And if you look at the kind of, ambition Indian entrepreneurs, I interact with entrepreneurs. Today, all of them are so clear on building large companies which are global. And of course, they're being built from India. So it will have a, so to say, contribution to the GDP. But the government is the largest driver of spends in everything, right? even if you look at media today, government is a very large advertiser, right? When it comes to infrastructure, government is the creator of the largest infrastructure projects. So in that sense, it's within the government influence to be able to really impact policy, even while the leeway is less. And the collections in terms of revenues for the government looks like they'll be record, right? So while the government functionaries, the secretaries are saying that the planned expenditure is also on target. So with the outlay for corona, for the vaccines, for social schemes, the outlay will be exhausted. But it looks like the government will end up with a surplus. And if that happens, the government has a little more leeway than it normally has. So what is your comment there, Professor Patnaik?
See, I don't think that this government is one that tries to do schemes which are ineffective. So they are often, the emphasis has been on very effective delivery. And sometimes it is things like giving interest subvention. So if you think about the Awas Yojanas, it is interest subvention, or the toilets, you give 20,000 and the rest the household puts in. So it has been an effective use of money. So if we see some schemes, then my sense is it is not that the outlay will be very big, but that the schemes will be delivered in a manner where they actually effectively reach the beneficiaries. Because there is, I worked with Jaitley ji as well when he was the finance minister. I was in the ministry and I worked with him at that time. Also, even in the past, this party has not had this thing of, just go spend money, don't care about the future. No. So it has been very, very prudent when it comes to how to look after government fisc, not just in the current situation, but also in the times to come. So it's almost like, when you treat something as your own and you look at it, not just, I have an election, so let me go splurge without caring for what's going to happen. But we've seen this fiscal prudence as part of the government. Now, very importantly, what comes with it is then to try to do policies which actually improve resource allocation and growth by improving the policy framework rather than just spending more. So if you can manage to...
Structural corrections, targeted delivery and structural correction.
Yeah, so if you can do corrections, if you can do actually, you use every rupee is used better, all the resources are used better. If you can make better policies, so the kind of policies that one would like to see improve further are those, for example, in the financial sector. We've seen a lot of financial inclusion, but we'd also like to see more financial sector reforms, entry of more banks, with better banking regulation, of course, but entry of more banks. So those are the kind of things which are policy changes. Even in Atmanirbhar, in the package in Atmanirbhar Bharat packages that were announced, the emphasis was on improving the policy environment and doing reforms rather than simply that we'll come in and spend more money. So that is, what I hope will continue. And I expect will continue because, we've now studied enough of this party in government for a very long time. And we don't see the sort of, spend money and forget about the future approach in this at all.
Thank you so much. Also, Shri Bhupender Yadav ji, आप एक पार्टी की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है. आप अभी ऑथर के नाते हम आपसे वार्तालाप कर रहे हैं. But you're also the environment minister of the country. And I did call your PS day before yesterday, and we wrote an article about the carbon credit, and I requested him that he should let you read it. Because again, in the work that has happened in the last 8 years in this government on environment, and in terms of, moving towards sustainability in a deep way is commendable, and it never gets highlighted. One of our columnists wrote it. So, and that's how, and I read the piece and I said, you must read it. So the move towards ESG compliant investing, the move towards, companies on their balance sheets also talking about the sustainability in a deep way has happened. So if you had an expectation from the business fraternity in terms of contributing to environment and while being sensitive to the environment, also environment not becoming an impediment in the growth? How do you strike that balance? कि वो एक perfect balance की environment का भी हम ध्यान रखें, लेकिन हमारी investment philosophy in terms of big projects में हम ESG का ध्यान रखें. What is your view on that, Mr. Yadav?
The thing is very much clear that we must maintain the balance between the ecology and development. And India is the country where our forest-dependent population is too much. We are representing the 17% population of the world. But as per the carbon emission is concerned, we are the lowest per capita in the world also. That is the thing. That's the reason our Prime Minister gave a mantra of lifestyle with environment. So we are, our approach is like that we are making our policy in the way that the environmental clearance, if you are fulfilling your criteria, you will get the clearance, but you must fulfill the criteria also regarding with the protection of environment is concerned. As per the expectation from the industries are concerned, I already raised this point earlier in the summit in conversation with the industrialists also, that you must go on the green technology. Green technology is the alternate, and green technology is the way for the next steps to the world. There are three main action taken by the government. One, with the collaboration of UK, that is a disaster resilient infrastructure forum. So many countries are the member of that forum. The second is the lead IT, which is basically work toward the green technology. There is a coalition with the Sweden. And third is the main important, where the India and France started in 2015. That's the International Solar Alliance. And recently in COP26, our Prime Minister going one step ahead, and India has started the One Sun, One World and One Grid. So I think solar energy and renewable energy is the main thing where we can go on the environment friendly technology. And India already fixed its target for production of 500 gigawatt electricity till 2030. And I think, and we have also promised in our Panchamrit, which is addressed by the Prime Minister in COP26, that India use the technology that we will save cumulative carbon emission, which going to be happen in 2030, 1 gigabillion carbon emission we will save. So that is our commitment, and our commitment very much, we are committed to getting the status of net zero in 2070. I think all industries will work together on this way. That is also one aspect of the Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Absolutely. Now we know that what happens in one part of the world does impact in environment is a major resource that we need to be more sensitive to. And sometimes in a quest to grow, we have been less concerned about the environment. And Mr. Minister, you would be happy to know that we at BW Businessworld in last 2 years started ranking India's top 500 companies on sustainability, and we do it with Sustain Labs Paris, which is held by Dr. Minya Chatterjee. And I'd come and met you, and you said that मैं March तक तो busy हूँ, but March के बाद we have postponed our launch of India's most sustainable companies list till March. जब तक हमें आपका समय नहीं मिलेगा, तो आपके we won't do it without your patronage and without your presence. Professor Patnaik, my last question to you. When someone reads your book, when someone reads a book, sees a painting, what they interpret and what they take away can be unique, because there are multiple use and multiple information points and knowledge points and data points in the book. And but what is the overall impact you're looking to have on reader? What should a reader, he or she, have an imprint on his or her mind once they've read the book? What is the key thing you're trying to communicate, which you hope the reader will take away?
I think that this party is a party which is representing many as communities, peoples, regions, expanding, and will therefore continue to be at the center stage of Indian politics. Whether there may be ups and downs, and very often, people might want to jump to a conclusion. One election lost, and people say, "Oh, this was the election." So I think that it would be great if the reader could see things in a broader perspective and see that it is not, the party has won and lost many elections. It has won many, it has lost many, it has learnt its lessons. But there is this long-term path that it is on, which is of trying to pull in more and more people, and of representing more and more people, of representing their interests, and that sense of, that this is not, we're not talking about just a few people who have risen and then that will, disappear, but we're talking about a country, a phenomena, a politics that is broad. So that's the sense that I think, that is broad, is here to stay. That's the sense that I'd like the reader to have.
Okay. For your final word, Mr. Yadav, that whoever reads the book, what is the impression or what is the takeaway they should have? What are you trying to communicate?
Those who are not aware about the functioning and ideology of the BJP, they must aware. Those who wants to know a political journey of a party, we are trying to provide that in detail. Those who feel that can in India a party with inner democracy can survive, a party without dynastic rule can survive, a party with a model of governance will be survive. These are the answer we are trying to give in this book. लेकिन जो सबसे बड़ी बात है कि हर समय का राजनीति पे, देश पे, समाज पे जिस इंस्टीट्यूशन का प्रभाव होता है उसका अध्ययन किया जाना चाहिए. आज के समय में बीजेपी देश के केंद्र की पार्टी है, उसका एक इम्पैक्ट है. हमने अपनी तरफ से एक अध्ययन करके लोगों के सामने रखा है. अब ये लोगों की समीक्षा है जो हमें बताएगी कि हमारा अध्ययन कैसा रहा है.
Thank you so much. I would like to add, while I knew a lot, I can say not all, but I loved it because it put things in a perspective. It showed continuity. And I would say the key message I took away when I read the party, that, as I said, this is a pragmatic party. It reinvents itself and it wants to be a mainstream party that is acceptable to everyone. Anyone who is progressive, who puts the nation first, is welcome to be part of the party. And the party will continue to be pragmatic and reinvent itself because it's a party that has done it multiple times in the past. And right now, electorally, it does well. But even in times when it didn't do well, it stayed true to its manifesto and its ideals and its ideology. So it's a party that is rooted in ideology, but continues to bring in more people, and hence the journey is important. So that's the message I walked out with, apart from very specific details of how the party was formed, how the governance model has evolved, and the two prime ministers that the party has given to the country, what is their personal vision, because you cannot take the leader of the party and the party's ideology in isolation. They come together to deliver what they need. So it's been a fascinating read, and it's been, I can tell you that I started reading and I couldn't put it down till I finished it, and I'm looking forward to reading it again to be able to really internalize some of the things I've read. I would recommend it highly to everyone. I know there are other books, and as you can see, there's a pile of books behind me. Books are like music; it's never either or; it's always and. So every book gives you a perspective. But because this book comes from Mr. Bhupender Yadav, who's lived in the party, has been is now a very important member of the party. He's a cabinet minister. He's had positions in the government and has really put together a very objective view. Another view is very objective view. Of course, it's highlighted the progressiveness and the positives of the party, but it is still a very pragmatic view of the party in the book. And Professor Ila Patnaik, who of course writes very well and has a point of view, while she is been an advisor to the government, but she is a little outside the government. So I think that she may believe in the philosophy of the government, but the fact is, it's a perfect jugalbandi, and I would recommend, and BW Businessworld would recommend that it should be your January read. So on this note, I congratulate both the author for writing this seminal book, if I can use that expression, and I don't use the word seminal in a very light way. These days we use the word iconic, seminal, sometimes in a very loose way. I thoroughly enjoyed reading the book, and I look forward to having more conversation on the evolution of party. And hopefully we'll have a conversation post-budget and the post-elections to see what has happened. Thank you for this conversation with BW Businessworld.
Thank you, Raj.
I'm sure the book will be a bestseller. And I was checking with my friends who own bookshops. The book is already doing very well. So again, people who are part of the party, people who believe in the philosophy, and everyone who wants to know about where the party is headed, because you have to know the history to know the future, are picking up the book. So all the best. Congratulations to Professor Ila Patnaik and to you, Shri Yadavji, for writing this book. We look forward to more writing from you. I know you have lots of responsibilities in the party and at this cabinet, but we look forward to you write lucidly, and congratulations. Thank you so much.